It's important to have password policies on your lockdown system. This this increases the security on your overall Linux system. The first thing you want to do is insist that password aging is turned on for all users. And this can be done by editing an existing user with the password command, -n for the number of days that you want to have the password active for before it expires. So we'll turn on 56 as an arbitrary number for this user. And that changes the value in the etc shadow file for the password, and it will expire in 56 days. You can see this. And you can see that this field here is where the password aging is turned on. That's 56 days. If you want to turn this on for every user that you create in the system, then you can edit the /etc/default/user add file. You edit this. By default, there's no password expiration on Fedora, so you just put a number behind this value here, and you can have your passwords expire at a certain amount of time. Also, you want to ensure that users don't reuse old passwords. You force them to use new, fresh passwords to increase security, and this can be set by editing file, systemauth file in the pam.d directory. So we can do that. And down here there's a line for the password sufficient, and at the very end of this line, if you just add remember equals and the number of passwords you want the system to remember. So in this case, I want it to remember like the last 8 passwords. That way, every time the user changes their password, the hash gets kept and they won't be able to use the last 8 passwords. You also want to verify that none of your accounts on your system have empty passwords. This can be a serious security flaw on your system. So to do this, you can run a quick little command that I generated to see if there are any users with no passwords. And I created one just to show us what that would look like if that was so. So you run that, and it looks at the entire shadow file and looks for any entry in the second field that's blank, and then prints the name. So in this case, there's a John Doe account in there. And sure enough, we have a user with a blank password. That's just my example. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. You can set up a cron tab to run that kind of thing. Also, you want to ensure that no users have the UID of 0 set. The only user that should have that is root, and that's to give root special privileges. So to ensure that you do that, you can also run this command here. And that looks at the password file and makes sure that the third field has a 0 in it, and it'll look at the entire file, and as long as it only says root, then you're fine. If you have another user that has a UID set to 0, then you got a serious problem with your system. You also want to set up an SSH key so that you can safely SSH to another machine. So in order to do that, you would type the SSH-keygen command, and we're going to do a type of an RSA key, and it asks you where you want to put the file, which is fine. It goes in the default .ssh directory, and it asks you to enter a password, so you enter a secret password. And that creates your public and private keys in the SSH directory. And here's the private key and the public key. So if you want to be able to SSH to another machine, what you would want to do at this point is SCP you SSH your public key to system X, a different system on your network. So you send your public key over to this other system and put it in the authorized keys file, and when it's in there, when you attempt to SSH to another machine, it will check your key against the public key and make sure that they're both the same and let you into the system without problems. Any user that attempts to SSH into the system that does not have their public key in here will be denied. And that's some quick ways to ensure that you have private keys and also passwords set up and some security for the password file. For an added level of security, you will want to lock down the BIOS so that people other than administrators will not be able to access the system. This can be done by setting a BIOS password. Inside the BIOS, once you get in the BIOS of the system, scroll over to security and down to set supervisor password, hit return, put in a password, and put it in again, and you're done. Now anytime you want to access the password, you will have to do so by putting in this secret password anytime you want to access the BIOS. And also another level of security is that one would want to do would be to limit the BIOS so that the system will not boot off of removable devices. This can be done by going into the boot section and lowering with the minus button, lowering the devices to the bottom of the boot order and leaving the disk at the top. That way every time the system is powered on, it boots by the disk and nothing else. By setting these two things and also putting a physical lock on the back of the box, you've secured the system to where it cannot be tampered with unless someone cuts the lock off. Save your changes and you're done. Thanks. As the administrator of a lockdown system, you will want to lock down cron so that only authorized users can run cron jobs on your system. We could do this by limiting the users who can do this to root only or to administrator, but we'll demonstrate this as root only. So first of all, we will create a simple cron tab. And a file has been created to limit the users who could do that, because currently there are no limits. You edit a file called /etc/cron.allow, and anyone who's in that file is allowed to run cron jobs. Anyone who is not in that file cannot. So the easiest way to do that, insert root in here. That means that only root can run cron jobs. And now you can see that when I go back here and try to edit the cron job again, I get a denied and cannot edit the cron job or the cron tab at all. So this locks your system down, so effectively only root can do it. You can edit this file and allow as many people as you want, or leave them out and they are no longer able to run cron at all. So this is how you secure your system with cron.